The transport shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with a dull roar. Captain James Reed stared out the small window, watching as the familiar blue and green of his home planet grew larger. 5 years had passed since he'd seen Earth. 5 years of blood, fire, and death fighting the Krell Empire across the stars. James clutched his duffel bag tighter as the shuttle touched down. His knuckles turned white around the worn fabric. Inside were all his possessions, a few clothes, his medals, and the small metal box containing dog tags of friends who never made it home. "Welcome back to Earth, soldiers," announced the pilot over the intercom. "Thank you for your service." The words rang hollow to James. He stood slowly, feeling the ache in his left leg where the Krell energy weapon had shattered his bone. The military doctors had done their best, but some wounds never fully healed. Outside the spaceport, James blinked in the bright sunlight. People walked past, busy with their daily lives. None of them looked at the soldiers. None of them understood what had happened out there among the stars. "Need a ride, Captain?" asked Wilson, one of the younger soldiers from his unit. James shook his head. "Got my own transport waiting. Take care of yourself, Wilson." The self-driving car took James away from the city, into the mountains where he had bought a small cabin with his combat pay. As buildings gave way to trees, James felt his breathing slow. The silence was a relief after years of constant noise. Explosions, gunfire, the screams of the wounded. The cabin stood alone at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by tall pine trees. It was simple. 2 rooms, basic furniture, a fireplace. James dropped his bag on the wooden floor and walked to the kitchen. He pulled out a bottle of whiskey and poured himself a drink. Night fell quickly in the mountains. James sat on his porch, watching the stars appear. Somewhere up there, the final peace agreements with the Krell were being signed. The war was officially over, but in his mind, James still heard the sounds of battle. Sleep did not come easily. James tossed on his bed, trapped in memories. He saw again the burning ships, the faces of his squad members as they died one by one. He woke with a shout, covered in sweat, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Days passed slowly. James chopped wood, fixed the cabin's leaky roof, and hiked through the forest. The military had promised support for returning soldiers, but all he received was a small monthly payment and occasional generic messages asking about his health. One night, as James sat cleaning his old service pistol, the one thing he couldn't bring himself to put away, his security system beeped. Something had crossed the perimeter he had set up around the cabin. James moved quietly to the window, pistol in hand. In the moonlight, he saw nothing unusual at first. Then a flash of light caught his eye. Deep in the trees, something was burning. He grabbed his jacket and a flashlight, then stepped outside. The mountain air was cold against his face as he followed the trail into the forest. The light grew brighter as he approached. James slowed his pace, moving from tree to tree, using the cover as he had been trained. When he reached the source of the light, he froze in shock. A small metal pod, no bigger than a car, had crashed through the trees. Steam rose from its surface where the hot metal met the cool night air. Alien markings covered its side, markings James recognized immediately. It was Krell. The war might be over on paper, but a piece of it had just landed in his backyard. James approached carefully, pistol raised. A section of the pod was damaged, revealing a dark opening. As he aimed his flashlight inside, his breath caught in his throat. A pair of large golden eyes stared back at him from the darkness. James kept his pistol aimed at the opening in the pod, his hand steady despite the shock. Those eyes, large, golden, with vertical pupils, were unmistakably Krell. They blinked once, then twice, reflecting the beam of his flashlight. "Come out." Slowly, James ordered, using the harsh Krell command phrases drilled into every soldier. A small 3-fingered hand emerged first, followed by a slender arm covered in fine scales that shimmered between green and blue in the moonlight. The Krell was smaller than the warriors James had fought, barely reaching his chest as it crawled from the wreckage. Blood, dark purple against the scales, streamed from a wound on the alien side. The Krell swayed slightly, then collapsed at James's feet. "Great," James muttered. He kept his distance, studying the alien. This was no warrior. The Krell wore no armor, just a simple jumpsuit with patches that resembled scientific insignia. A researcher, maybe, or some kind of civilian. Every instinct told James to call the military immediately. The war might be over, but a Krell on Earth was still a security threat. His hand moved to the communication device in his pocket. The Krell made a soft, pained sound, its eyes fixed on James, not with hatred or aggression, but with something he recognized all too well: fear. James sighed. He tucked the pistol into his waistband and knelt beside the injured alien. "I must be losing my mind," he said as he examined the wound. It wasn't fatal, but it needed treatment. He lifted the Krell, surprised by how light it was, and carried it back to his cabin. The alien's skin was warm to the touch, its breathing quick and shallow. Inside, James laid the Krell on his couch and gathered his first aid supplies. 5 years of battlefield medicine had given him plenty of practice with wounds, though he'd never treated a Krell before. This might hurt, he warned, not sure if the alien could understand him. He cleaned the wound carefully, applied antibacterial gel, and bandaged it. The Krell remained conscious throughout, watching James with those unnerving golden eyes. When he finished, the alien reached for something attached to its belt, a small device that had been damaged in the crash. James tensed, but the Krell simply held it out, making a series of clicks and whistles. "I don't understand you," James said. The Krell worked with the device, attaching a broken piece, then pressed a button. Static filled the air, followed by a mechanical voice. "Thank you. For help, not kill me." James sat back, stunned. A translator. Clever. Yes, translator. Not perfect. "I am Talia. Not soldier. Science only." "What are you doing on Earth?" James demanded. The Krell, Talia, fumbled with the translator again. "Escape. My people want kill me. I say war wrong. They say traitor." James laughed bitterly. "So we both backed the wrong side, huh?" Talia tilted her head, not understanding. The translator sparked, and she set it aside to cool. James stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark forest. The right thing to do was clear: contact the authorities. But something held him back. Maybe it was the way the Krell had looked at him, with fear rather than hatred. Maybe it was simply that he was tired of the war and all it had taken from him. Morning light crept through the window when James finally made his decision. He turned to find Talia sleeping fitfully on the couch, one hand protectively covering her wound. "You can stay until you're healed," he said quietly. "Then we figure out what to do with you." As if understanding his words, Talia's breathing seemed to ease. James watched the alien for a moment longer, then went to secure the crashed pod. If anyone found it, questions would follow. Questions neither of them could afford. Outside, birds sang their morning songs, oblivious to the strange new visitor in their forest. For the first time since returning to Earth, James felt something other than emptiness. It wasn't peace, not yet. But perhaps it was a start. 3 days passed since James found Talia in the crashed pod. 3 days of cautious observation and minimal communication. The alien spent most of the time sleeping or working on her damaged translator device. James kept his distance, watching. On the morning of the 4th day, James entered the living room to find Talia standing by the bookshelf, examining his military photos. "Those are my squad members," James said, making Talia jump. "Most of them are dead now." Talia's translator crackled to life. "I am sorry for loss. War, terrible for all." James poured himself coffee, his movements stiff. "Why were your people trying to kill you?" Talia's scales rippled slightly, A reaction James had learned indicated distress. I work. Research science team. Find humans not. Monsters military say. Try tell truth. They call. Traitor. Propaganda works both ways, I guess, James muttered. Our commanders told us Krell ate human prisoners. Talia's eyes widened. No. Never. Such things. Forbidden. We, herbivores. James couldn't help but laugh. Herbivores. We fought a 5-year war against space vegetarians. The tension in the room eased slightly. James pushed a bowl of fruit across the table. Talia approached cautiously, selected an apple, and bit into it with obvious pleasure. News say all Krell leave Earth system, Talia said between bites. But many hide. Like me. Afraid return home. James frowned. There are more of you hiding on Earth. That's not good. His military comm unit beeped from the table. James picked it up, seeing an official alert. AT into Lyon all VTERNs. Report any suspected alien technology or sightings immediately. Reward offered. Remaining Krell presence represents critical security threat. James shut off the device, looking at Talia. They're hunting for you. What will you do? Talia asked quietly, her golden eyes fixed on him. Before James could answer, a knock came at the door. He motioned for Talia to hide in the bedroom and grabbed his pistol. Through the window, he saw his neighbor Tom, another veteran who'd settled in the mountains after the war. Morning, Reed, Tom said when James opened the door. Saw some unusual lights in the forest few nights back. Military's asking questions. Thought you should know. Thanks for the heads up, James replied, keeping his expression neutral. Tom's eyes drifted past James into the cabin. You got company or something? Just me. Tom nodded slowly. Right. Well, watch yourself. Military's offering good money for alien tech. He paused. If you found something, best turn it in. War might be over, but those lizards can't be trusted. After Tom left, James closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. Talia emerged from the bedroom, her translator picking up James's last whispered words. You will turn me in, she asked. James looked at the alien. For years, the Krell had been nothing but enemies to him, faceless monsters behind plasma rifles. But Talia was different. Scared. Vulnerable. Just trying to survive. Like him. No, he said finally. But we need to be more careful. And we need to hide that pod better. That night, they worked together under the cover of darkness. James used his old military skills to camouflage the crashed pod, while Talia salvaged important components. My ship had important data, Talia explained as they walked back to the cabin. Proof war started by mistake, misunderstanding. Some on both sides wanted conflict. Wouldn't be the first time soldiers die for someone else's agenda, James said bitterly. Back at the cabin, Talia surprised him by preparing a meal from the vegetables in his garden. It was strange but oddly tasty. As they ate, James realized something had changed. The alien wasn't just a problem to solve anymore. Talia was becoming something he hadn't expected. A connection to the world when he'd thought all his connections were broken. Tomorrow I teach you human customs, James said. If you're staying, you need to blend in better. Talia's scales rippled in what James now recognized as her species' version of a smile. Thank you for not seeing monster. James nodded slowly. Same to you. The military helicopter flew low over the forest, its searchlights sweeping across the trees. James and Talia pressed themselves against the ground, hidden under a camouflage tarp. They had been hiking back from the hidden pod when they heard the aircraft approaching. Third patrol this week, James whispered as the helicopter passed. They're getting serious about finding Krell. Talia's translator hummed softly. Your government announced peace. Why still hunt? Peace on paper isn't the same as peace in people's hearts, James replied. 5 years of war isn't easy to forget. They waited until the sound of rotors faded before continuing back to the cabin. Over the past 2 weeks, James had taught Talia basic human customs: how to eat with utensils, wear human clothes, and speak in short sentences that wouldn't strain her translator. In return, Talia shared knowledge about Krell technology and culture. As they approached the cabin, James noticed fresh tire tracks in the dirt road. He signaled Talia to stop and drew his pistol. "Someone's been here," he said quietly. They circled around to the back of the cabin. Through the window, James could see that someone had searched the place. Drawers were open, papers scattered. "Military police," James said, recognizing the methodical nature of the search. Tom must have reported his suspicions. "Not safe here now," Talia said, her scales darkening with stress. James nodded. "We need to move deeper into the mountains. I know some old mining caves that aren't on any maps." They gathered essential supplies quickly: food, water purifiers, medical kits, and Talia's translator parts. As they prepared to leave, headlights appeared on the road leading to the cabin. "Too late," James muttered. "Quick, under the floorboards." He lifted the hidden trapdoor he'd installed years ago, an old soldier's habit, and they squeezed into the small space beneath the cabin just as vehicles pulled up outside. Through the cracks, they watched as military police entered, led by a stern-faced woman with captain's insignia. "Captain Reed clearly harbored a Krell," she said to her team. "Find any evidence of where they might have gone." James and Talia remained motionless for hours as the search continued above them. Finally, as dawn approached, the military police left, setting up surveillance cameras before departing. "They'll be watching the cabin now," James whispered. "We'll have to be careful when we leave." They waited until nightfall before slipping out through a tunnel James had dug from the hidden space to the forest, another paranoid precaution that now proved valuable. The journey through the mountains was difficult. Summer storms drenched them as they hiked higher into the wilderness. During one particularly heavy downpour, they took shelter under an overhanging rock. "Why help me?" Talia asked suddenly, her translator struggling against the sound of rain. "I am enemy. You risk everything." James was quiet for a long moment, watching the rain. "During the war, I stopped seeing individuals. The Krell were just targets. It was the only way to survive." He looked at Talia. "Maybe helping you is how I become human again." A crash of thunder startled them both. The storm intensified, sending a rush of water down the mountainside. James spotted the flash flood too late. A wall of water and debris slammed into them, sweeping Talia away from the shelter. Without hesitation, James plunged into the torrent. He fought against the current, glimpsing Talia's struggling form ahead. Her lighter body was being tossed like a leaf in the flood. James pushed forward, his military training taking over. He caught up to Talia just as she was being pulled under. Grabbing her arm, he pulled her toward a fallen tree that bridged the newly formed river. Together they dragged themselves onto the trunk, gasping for breath. "You saved me," Talia said in wonder, her translator sputtering with water damage. "We're not enemies anymore," James replied simply. "Maybe we never should have been." As they huddled together for warmth, something fundamental had changed between them. The barriers of species and war had been washed away by the flood, replaced by something neither had expected to find: trust. The mining cave provided shelter from both the elements and searching eyes. James had stocked it with emergency supplies years ago, another habit from his military days that now proved useful. As Talia worked to repair her damaged translator, James kept watch at the cave entrance. "Someone's coming," he whispered, spotting movement through his binoculars. 3 figures moved through the forest below, dressed in the distinctive black uniforms of the Special Alien Containment Unit, an elite military group formed during the war to capture and interrogate Krell. "They're tracking us," James said. "Must have found our trail after the flood." Talia's translator sparked to life. "These soldiers, different from others, more dangerous." "The worst kind," James replied grimly. SACU doesn't just capture aliens, they hunt them, and they don't care much about keeping them alive. Through his binoculars, James recognized the lead officer, Colonel Parker, a man known for his brutal efficiency during the war. Parker had commanded the interrogation units where captured Krell rarely survived questioning. "We need to move deeper into the cave system," James said, gathering their few belongings. They navigated through narrow passages, using James's small flashlight to guide them. The caves twisted and branched, forming a natural maze within the mountain. "I hear them," Talia whispered, her sensitive hearing picking up sounds James couldn't detect. 3 humans, following. They increased their pace, winding through the dark tunnels until they reached a large underground chamber. Water dripped from stalactites, forming a small pool in the center. "Dead end," James muttered, scanning the walls for another exit. Talia moved to the far wall, running her fingers over strange markings carved into the stone. "These symbols, Krell." James joined her, shining his light on the ancient carvings. "How is that possible?" "My people visited Earth, long ago, before war, before your civilization." Before James could process this revelation, a voice echoed through the cave. "Captain James Reed, by order of Earth Defense Command, surrender the Krell immediately." Colonel Parker stood at the chamber entrance, flanked by 2 soldiers with pulse rifles aimed at James and Talia. "The war is over, Colonel," James said, stepping in front of Talia. "The official conflict ended," Parker agreed, his voice cold. "But the real war continues. These creatures infiltrated our planet for years before attacking. They're gathering intelligence again, preparing for the next invasion." "That's not true," James argued. "The war was based on misunderstandings, manipulated by people who profited from it." Parker laughed. "Still believing alien lies, Reed? The Krell are masters of deception." One of Parker's soldiers stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "Captain Reed." "It's me, Mike, from the 103rd. James recognized the young soldier who had served under him in the final year of the war. "Mike, you shouldn't be part of this." "We've been ordered to bring in all Krell for questioning," Mike said, his voice uncertain. "Command says they're security threats." "By questioning, you mean torture," James replied. "Is that what we fought for?" Mike hesitated, looking between James and Parker. Parker's patience ended. "Enough talk. Take them both." As the soldiers advanced, Talia suddenly pressed her hand against the Krell symbols on the wall. The stone began to glow with a soft blue light. "What's happening?" James asked. "Ancient technology," Talia explained as the wall slid open, revealing the hidden passage. "Emergency exit." Without hesitation, James pulled Mike's rifle away and shoved the young soldier aside. He fired a shot at the cave ceiling, causing rocks to fall and temporarily block Parker's path. "This way," Talia called, pulling James into the passage as Parker fired blindly through the falling debris. The hidden tunnel sloped upward, lit by the same blue glow as the symbols. As they ran, James realized their situation had fundamentally changed. Now they weren't just hiding. They were actively opposing military forces. "You could have surrendered me," Talia said as they climbed. "Saved yourself." James shook his head. "Not who I am anymore." The tunnel ended at a small opening high on the mountainside, hidden by thick vegetation. As they emerged into the sunlight, James saw Mike climbing up behind them, alone. "Captain Reed," Mike called. "Wait, I want to help." James kept his weapon trained on Mike as the young soldier emerged from the tunnel. "Give me one good reason not to shoot you right now," James said, his voice hard. Mike slowly raised his hands. "Because I've seen enough to know something's wrong. Parker has been hunting Krell civilians, not soldiers. He's collecting their tech and taking it somewhere not on any official base." James didn't lower his weapon. "How do I know this isn't a trick?" "Because I served under you in the Battle of Proxima," Mike replied. "You taught us that we fight to protect, not to destroy. What Parker is doing isn't protection. It's revenge. Or something worse. Talia stepped forward, her translator humming. I believe him. His eyes show truth. James finally lowered his gun. What do you know about Parker's operation? He reports to someone outside the regular chain of command, Mike explained. And he's especially interested in Krell communication technology. That's why he wants you, he added, looking at Talia. Your translator is more advanced than anything we've captured. The three of them moved deeper into the forest as Mike shared what he knew. Parker had established a secret facility in an abandoned military bunker 20 miles away. There, a team of scientists worked on Krell technology, focusing on communication and navigation systems. They're preparing for something, Mike said. Something big that isn't in any official reports. Night fell as they made camp in a hidden ravine. Talia worked on her translator, adding components from Mike's communication device to boost its capabilities. What's your plan? Mike asked James. You can't run forever. We need evidence, James replied. Proof of what Parker is doing, and why. Something concrete we can take public. Talia's translator suddenly emitted a series of rapid clicks. I receiving signal. Krell frequency. She adjusted the device, and a voice emerged. A Krell voice, translated into English. Repeat, all units maintain schedule. The human Krell peace agreement is a temporary measure. Prepare for Phase 2 activation. That's from Parker's facility, Mike said, recognizing a code phrase. They must have Krell communication equipment running. Or Krell prisoners, Talia added grimly. James's expression hardened. We need to get into that facility. Using Mike's security clearance, they formulated a plan. The bunker had minimal guards. Secrecy was its main protection. With Mike's access codes, they could enter through a maintenance tunnel. The next day, they approached the facility under cover of a thunderstorm. Rain pounded the earth as they reached the hidden entrance, a simple metal door built into the side of a hill. Once we're inside, we'll have 15 minutes before the security system detects unauthorized access, Mike explained as he entered his code. The door slid open, revealing a narrow concrete passage. Emergency lights cast a red glow along the walls as they moved silently forward. They reached the main section of the bunker without encountering guards. Through a window in a security door, they saw what looked like a laboratory. Scientists in white coats worked on pieces of Krell technology, including what appeared to be parts from escape pods similar to Talia's. The server room should be one level down, Mike whispered. That's where they'll keep their records. As they descended a metal staircase, an alarm suddenly blared through the facility. They've detected us, James said, drawing his weapon. They ran, reaching the server room just as security doors began closing throughout the facility. Mike quickly connected a data drive to the main terminal. Downloading everything, he said, typing commands rapidly. This will give us. He stopped, staring at the screen. Captain, you need to see this. On the screen was a document titled Operation Second Strike. It detailed plans for a coordinated attack on Krell homeworlds, using their own technology against them. The peace agreement had been a ruse, designed to lower Krell defenses, while Earth prepared a devastating first strike. This is why they want all Krell technology, James said, reading quickly. They're building weapons the Krell won't be able to detect. And why they hunt any Krell still on Earth, Talia added, to prevent warning. The door to the server room burst open. Colonel Parker stood there, flanked by armed guards. Captain Reed, he said coldly, I see you found our little project. Too bad you won't live to tell anyone about it. Actually, Colonel, they already know, Mike said, pressing a final button on the computer. The screen flashed green. Transmission complete. Parker's face twisted with rage. What did you do? We just sent everything. Operation Second Strike. Your illegal detention of Krell civilians. All of it. To every major news outlet on Earth. And to the Krell diplomatic channels. James explained, his weapon still raised. The truth is out. Parker lunged forward, but James was faster. He tackled the colonel to the ground as alarms blared throughout the facility. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to fire with their commander in the line of fire. Talia's translator crackled. "More soldiers coming. We must go now." Mike led them through a maintenance passage as the facility erupted into chaos. Behind them, they could hear Parker shouting orders, his voice nearly drowned out by the facility's emergency systems. They emerged into the rain-soaked forest just as military vehicles began arriving at the main entrance. Searchlights cut through the darkness as they ran, using the storm as cover. "There's a civilian settlement 10 miles north," Mike said between breaths. "If we can reach it, we might find help." They traveled through the night, the sounds of pursuit gradually fading behind them. By dawn, they reached the small town. On every screen, in shop windows, on personal devices, the same news played. Breaking. Secret military pilot exposed. People gathered in the streets, watching in shock as classified documents and video evidence from Parker's facility played across their screens. The faces of the townspeople showed confusion, anger, and disbelief. "It worked," Mike said, watching a group huddled around a large display. "They're showing everything." A news anchor's voice rose above the crowd. "Government officials have confirmed the authenticity of the documents. The president has ordered the immediate shutdown of Operation Second Strike and the arrest of all military personnel involved." James, Talia, and Mike found shelter in a small cafe where the owner, an elderly veteran, recognized James from his service record now being displayed on the news. "You did the right thing, Captain," the man said, bringing them food and dry clothes. "This war cost us too much already." As they rested, reports continued to pour in. The Krell leadership had responded to the revelations with their own shocking announcement. They too had been planning a second attack, manipulated by military leaders who claimed humans were developing biological weapons to use against them. Both sides were being pushed toward another war, Talia said quietly, watching the reports. "By people who profit from conflict." 3 days later, James stood before an emergency session of the United Earth Council, with Talia beside him. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, along with a small delegation of Krell who had been in hiding on Earth. "Captain Reed," the council president began, "your actions have prevented what might have been the final war between our species. The council wishes to thank you, and your Krell companion, for your courage." James looked out at the assembled leaders. "I didn't do this for thanks. I did it because I've seen enough death. Both our species have. It's time we truly learned to live together." The following months brought rapid change. A new Joint Human-Krell Commission was formed to oversee peaceful integration. James was asked to lead a special team focused on helping veterans from both sides adapt to peace. On a warm autumn day, James stood with Talia on the porch of a new house, built at the edge of what was now called Integration Zone 1, the first settlement designed for both species to live together. "Do you think it will work?" Talia asked, watching human and Krell children playing together in the distance. James smiled, something that came easier to him now. "Look at us, former enemies who became friends. If we can do it, anyone can." As the sun set over the settlement, James realized that the war had taken much from him, but it had also given him something unexpected, a new purpose and a companion who understood both the cost of conflict and the value of peace. "This is just the beginning," he said, as more families arrived at the settlement, humans and Krell together. Talia nodded, her scales shimmering in the fading light. "A better beginning than either of us could have imagined." In the distance, the first stars appeared in the evening sky. The same stars that had once witnessed their battles, now watching over their shared future.